Do you ever wonder why the same pain seems to come back over and over again? In today's video, one of my 5-minute analogies, I'll explain one of the frameworks that we use to understand why we see so often people's pain coming and going and coming back again. We'll also look at ways that you can stop your pain from coming back if you're one of those people who has pain that comes and goes. Hi, I'm Catherine, founder and principal therapist of Leighton Sports Massage, an award-winning clinic in East London. In this channel, I share tips and information on how your body works so that you can take better care of yourself in your day-to-day life and hopefully help reduce your daily aches and pains. Have you ever had a problem that seems to come and go and you notice it and it usually goes away after a week, and then you notice it again and it goes away again until one day it just doesn't go away? We get this problem in our clinic a lot. Somebody will come in and be like, oh, I have this neck pain. I've had it for 2 weeks and it's just not going. And I say, okay, how long have you had it? And they'll usually say, I've had it for 2 weeks. Like I just said, aren't you listening? And then I say, okay, is this the first time you've ever had this pain? And almost always they say, no, I've had it before, but it always goes away. And this time it hasn't. Not only that, but a lot of the times when that pain comes, it comes when you're doing something seemingly innocuous, like you just sleep funny one night, or you bend over to pick something up like a pencil and you throw out your lower back. Now, one of the ways that we understand the way the body works, or a framework that we use at the clinic, is called the water bucket analogy. So in this analogy, we imagine that tension is like water, and your bucket is how much tension you can hold before you have a problem. Now, most people think if you have a pain and rest it, and then it goes away, that pain's disappeared, like it's completely gone. But actually what we find is that the tension is still there. The underlying cause of the problem is still there, but they're just not overflowing the bucket. So let's say that you have a problem with neck and shoulder pain. Let's say that you have a neck pain that come and goes. The way that we see it is that you're probably carrying a fair amount of tension in your bucket from day to day. You're maybe that close from it being overflowing. But because your bucket's not overflowing yet, you don't feel a problem. And then something small happens, like maybe you get stressed at work, maybe you have a tight deadline coming up, maybe you go on holiday and sleep on a weird pillow, and then that little extra bit of tension, because your bucket is already so close to full, overflows, and then you have a problem. And then most of the time you rest, take some deep breaths, you come back to sleeping on your normal pillow, and you feel better. But what's really happened is you've just taken away that little tiny bit of tension. And once you start the activity again, or once you have something else that stresses you out, you're overflowing the bucket again. And we see this a lot with people who exercise, like so people who are runners or cyclists. They'll have a niggle or a pain, they'll go see somebody, or they'll be told to rest. So they rest it for 2 weeks and then it feels better. But it feels better because they've reduced the amount of water that they're putting in the bucket. And then they go back to their training schedule, they go back to running, or they go back to cycling. And because they haven't emptied out the bucket and they haven't figured out what's putting water in the bucket in the first place, within a week or two, they're back to where they started. Now, this is really important during a period of time when you're training for an event, because losing too much time to not training in the training window that you have can really put you back off of achieving whatever goal you set yourself. And it is true that certain injuries do need rest. When there's inflammation, when there's damage to the muscle, you need to rest it so that the body can repair itself. But sometimes pain doesn't come from an injury, like torn muscle, so to speak. It comes from tension and an imbalance. And resting doesn't get rid of that tension, and it doesn't address the imbalance. So how do you fill up your bucket? What creates tension that we carry? On a day-to-day basis, you are probably net positive when it comes to how much water you're putting in the bucket. Moving around creates tension. Repetitive movements creates tension in your body, like running, walking, typing. Long hold muscle contraction. And when I say long hold muscle contraction, I mean like when you're contracting something for a long period of time without changing it, also creates tension, puts water in the bucket. So as an example, if you're sitting at your desk and your head is forward, the tops of the shoulders and the back of the neck are tight that whole time because they're trying to pull your head back. They're trying to prevent your head from falling forward. So it's long hold tension because it's sitting there and tensing the whole time that you're sitting with your head forward. One of the things that we look at when we're trying to figure out how you're putting water in the bucket is, are you putting water in your bucket quickly or are you putting it in slowly? So if you have a very small imbalance, like let's say that you have a running gait, but your running gait is like only slightly off, or let's say that you have a postural imbalance, but your head is like a millimeter too forward instead of an inch. We would say that you're putting water in your bucket with a teaspoon or a dropper. So it's going to take you a really long time to fill your bucket once your bucket's empty. But if you have a big imbalance, like you have a big postural problem, or you have a big problem with the way that you're running or cycling, we would say that you're putting water in your bucket with like a jug or a cup. So you're going to fill your bucket up very quickly. So why don't you feel the bucket as you're filling it up? Like if we're going to use this analogy that tension is water filling up a bucket, why don't you notice as you get tighter? Well, the main reason is that usually because it's an incremental change, your body can adapt. Like, I don't know if you've ever gone for a massage and you go to turn your head and you're surprised because your head doesn't turn as far as you think it should. Like it stops too early. Well, your body has been secretly adjusting so that when you're turning your head, your shoulders are coming with you. So you don't even notice that you're building up this tension. So usually our body is doing its absolute best to try and compensate for us. So if it's a little bit tight, it's like, oh, I can work around this. Oh, I can work around this. And it's not until there is just too much tension for your body to compensate against do you start to feel a problem. And in one way, this is super helpful. We wouldn't want to be debilitated every single time we had a little bit of tension, right? But on the other, it's kind of problematic because then you don't realize that you're developing a problem sometimes until it's too late. So when we're working with our clients, we are trying to figure out how do we stop water from going in and what's the best way to take water out. So taking water out of the bucket is massage, or stretching or yoga, usually. So anything that is removing tension from the body is taking water out. Often tension is being created because of bad input, because you're putting water, you have an imbalance. So we also want to look at what are you doing that's putting water in the bucket? What's your imbalance? What postural adjustment do you need to make? Is there a mechanical issue that we need to address? But usually, because most of our mechanical problems have been so long in development, we need time before we can fully switch to the right way of doing things. And then in the meantime, you need to focus on taking water out of the bucket as well as addressing the underlying cause. And to be honest, there are some situations where you're just going to be putting water in a bucket. I mean, like if you're an ultra runner or if you're running a lot during the week and you don't have very much time to stretch, you're going to be putting a lot of tension into your bucket. But we try to work with people as much as we can to get them to not be putting water into the bucket as well as taking water out and getting really clear and specific on what they need to change, kind of like the underlying core problem of the issue. Now that you understand our water bucket analogy, water going in, keeping water out, taking water out, water being tension, the bucket being your capacity for tension, how does this analogy help you? So our human default is that when we're aware of a problem, we try to fix it. But for most of us, we're aware of the problem when we feel a pain. And usually by the time we feel a pain, we're really far down that road. Like we've been developing a problem for a long time. So if you can be aware that you're developing tension that can restrict you, you can create a plan or a strategy that will mean that you stop creating tension, and hopefully don't get to the point of feeling pain. And unfortunately, for some reason, I'm not really sure why, it seems like we're most likely to have that horrible pain at the least convenient time. So I had one client who had like neck and shoulder pain off and on for a few years. One of the most important weeks of her professional life, she woke up and she couldn't turn her head and she had to call out of work. And that's when I met her, was when she came to me because she couldn't turn her head. Or we have people who 2 weeks before a marathon, when they've been training for months and months, then they get an injury, like a pain, and they can't race because it's too painful. But if we'd addressed it months ago, they would have been fine. Or with the client who had been neck and shoulder pain off and on for years, it had never been that bad until that day. But if she'd addressed it one of the times before, she would have been in a lot better shape. So one of the things that you can do is regularly check your movements. So let's say it's neck and shoulders for you. You can do a neck rotation, you can do arms over the head, and see how easy it is to do full range of movement if you feel any tension or restriction anywhere. Or the next time that you notice a niggle and it goes away, don't think that it's done. Don't think that it's finished. Think, okay, that was a sign from my body that something's going on. Let me look into it and see what I need to do to fix it. Now, obviously, I love massage because that's what we offer. So I think it's really useful to go see a massage therapist or sometimes a physio or an osteo. But you can also do self-assessments. You can also look at your own movement and do stretching or strengthening exercises. There are a lot of ways that you can equip yourself to be better with filling up your bucket, so to speak. So, do you have a pain or a discomfort that comes and goes for you? If you do, let me know what it is in the comments. Do you have any idea what it is that could be putting water in your bucket and how you could stop putting water in your bucket? Or do you have an idea of what you can do to take water out of the bucket? Now, keep an eye out for one of my future videos where I talk about why you shouldn't just focus on where you feel the pain, because usually the cause of the problem is not where you feel the pain. So be careful. If you have a pain in your neck, you don't want to just stretch your neck. You need to look at the whole system. But if you let me know what you struggle with in the comments, I can try to prioritize videos that will help you with those things. And let me know what you think you can do to stop water coming in from the bucket or take water out. Now, I will be doing various videos that talk about what puts water in the bucket for various aches and pains and how to take it out. So if you don't want to miss any of those, make sure that you subscribe to my channel, like this video, and share it with anybody who you know who could use some help with recurring aches and pains. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.